So bonjour, and welcome everyone. My name is Linda Witt. I'm the president of the Fédération des Alliances Françaises USA. I'm located here in Portland on the West Coast, and I'm joined today by our National Programs Administrator, Melissa Sora, who is based in DC and who is managing today's session on the technology side. So please say hi, Melissa, so that people can put a name to a face.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Okay, great. All right, while everyone settles into the room, I'll make a few introductory comments and then do a brief introduction of the book, and then we'll turn to some questions and answers. I would like to go ahead and, first of all, you are in the right place if you're expecting the discussion with Gregory Curtis. So slide number 2, Melissa, thank you. And I wanted to tell you about a few other events that are coming up that I hope you'll be interested in. One is next Tuesday. We have an Apéro National French Conversation group, and Greg is welcome to join us. Maybe we can talk him into it. If you're at the intermediate or advanced level of French, then you're welcome to join this group, and there's more information on it on the website at the bottom of the page there. And then also next Tuesday, we have a really cool event live from France. I think it's from Lake Annecy with Jean-Louis Jurin. He's a master chef, and he will be doing a live French barbecue demonstration. Right in advance of the July 14th holiday there in France. Now that event will be kind of in French, and it'll be a mixture of French and English. So everybody's welcome. And then after that, in late August, we have a blockbuster event with 4 world-renowned experts in the area of cultural differences between French and Americans. And those are Janet Hulstron, Adrian Leeds of House Hunters International, Harriet Welty Rochefort, and Mark Greenside. So we hope that you'll tune in for that event in August. And then finally, that one will be primarily in English with a little bit of French. And then in September, we have another really fascinating event with Dominique Bonnat, who's actually a member of the Académie Française. And she'll be coming to us and talking to us about what she's doing on the Académie Française, as well as on her books. She's a novelist and a biographer. That particular event will be completely in French. All right, our next slide, please. I want to tell you just a little bit about logistics before we get going here with the questions and answers with Greg. We want you to stay on mute during the presentation because it'll be a good auditory experience for everyone. You want to go ahead and use the chat feature as much as you like for submitting questions for the question and answer period, which will be toward the end. And Melissa will be taking a look at what's coming in the chat and kind of queuing everything up. Just a reminder that you'll want to stay on speaker view because we're going to have a lot of images. Not only do you want to see your speakers, right, but we'll be having quite a few images. So you'll want to stay on speaker view. And then just a reminder, depending on your device, you can enlarge or shrink the images as you might need to on your end. And then finally, Zoom is pretty dependable. But in the event of something goes wrong for you, you can't hear, whatever, we suggest that you go ahead and leave the session and then try and wait for a minute or two and then log in using the same link that you came into the session originally. And then finally, I think you've all noticed already, but we are recording this event, and if that's not comfortable for you, then you can certainly leave. Our total runtime, we think, will be right around an hour today. And then now it's my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker. Greg's memoir that we'll be discussing today describes how at the age of 66 and after 35 years of marriage, his wife Tracy succumbed to a battle with cancer. He and Tracy both enjoyed many happy visits to Paris and other parts of France. So this is kind of a story about how he discovers and rediscovers Paris at these different points in his life and how he contemplates new futures. Gregory takes us along on this journey of tender memories and grief, combined with new lessons to be learned. And so it's really interesting. We're going to find that the book is as much an ode to the city of Paris itself as it is to Greg's wife. So it really doubles almost as a very valuable and touching guidebook as he takes the reader along with him to his classes in Paris, for example, and along with him as he strolls in many sections of Paris and discovers quite a few secrets of Paris that he's going to share with us today. So during today's session, we will impose on Gregory to share some of the insights of his favorite places in Paris. In fact, we'll get to quite a few of them. But to get the full effect, of course, you'll want to go ahead and pick up the book. It was released a couple months ago. It is available at major booksellers and on Amazon. And so you'll hopefully want to pick up the book before your next trip to Paris. So with that, I'd like to say welcome, Gregory, and thanks for spending time with us today. We are eager to hear your answers to the many questions that we've queued up, and I don't have enough questions for everybody or to take up the full hour. So I'm encouraging the audience to be sure to put your questions in the chat as we go along. Okay, hope everyone can help me out with that. Okay. So Greg, are you ready for our first questions?
I'm ready.
Oh, good. And I wanted to mention one thing that I forgot to say, that is that the Greg is based in Austin, Texas. Melissa, did we skip one slide? Back up just a little. You know, the one that has his introductory comments and so forth. I mean the bullets on his books and so forth.
I can go back.
Yeah, if you would go back. I think we skipped one.
Sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure it's my fault. At any rate, I wanted to point out that this is not Greg's first rodeo, so to speak. He has. There we go. I think I might have skipped this one. He is the author also of some nonfiction books. The first one being The Cave Painters, and then another on the story of the Venus de Milo. So you know, fiction, nonfiction, sorry, and historical books. Greg's work has appeared in the New York Times Magazine, in Fortune Magazine, and in the Rolling Stone. He was, the editor of Texas Monthly from 1981 till 2000. So really almost 20 years with that very highly respected magazine. And then last but not least about Greg, which is not on the slide, he was also a teacher at the University of Austin, which just happens to be my alma mater. So I'm a little bit biased in that regard. Okay. Greg, anything you'd like to add to that introduction?
No, that was good.
Now, are you still teaching at UT, or is that something you're finished with?
I'm not teaching anymore, but I am still on the staff there of the Harry Ransom Center, which is the Special Collections Library. And they have an excellent French collection, by the way.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, so I'm involved there.
Oh, that's so great. That's so great.
Yeah.
Always enjoy hearing good things about my alma mater. Okay, now to the questions that we've got for you. This being your first memoir, did you find it hard? We're curious. Did you find it hard to write for this particular genre?
I'd never written a book-length memoir, but I had written magazine stories that were not memoirs, but were personal, about my family or about myself or something that I did. So it wasn't completely alien to me. And I did find it difficult in a surprising way. This book's the only thing I've ever written that I didn't write chronologically. That is, that I didn't start with the first paragraph and then go straight forward. Somehow I began in what I knew would be the middle of the book, and then wrote the sections as I felt ready and prepared to write them, and then reassembled the parts into the proper chronology afterwards. And I think some of that was just what I was prepared to face emotionally in writing about at any given moment. And so I kind of had to feel myself out before I knew which direction I was going to take. That said, it was less hard on me than I had worried that it would be. I had made the decision to do it, and I felt that I had found my voice for that book, and so I was prepared to go ahead. Oddly, I don't know if it's oddly or not, but I also made the audio recording of the book, and in reading that somehow, and this surprised me, that reading the book for recording was more emotionally charged for me than even writing the book. I was surprised, but your emotions, you can't control them. That's why they're emotions.
Well, especially when it regards grief. Yes. Now, I have to ask you a question which bothered me the whole way through the book, because I look back at some of my past travels and I can't remember a darn thing. You remembered incredible amounts of details, even the name of the clerk or the clerk in a store, 20 and 30 years ago. So what's your secret for remembering all the details of all your trips to France and what you did? Are you a journaler?
Well, the secret is snapshots. There's a lot of albums of, I say photographs, they're not photographs, they're snapshots that Tracy and I both took during our trips. And then there were also postcards and letters that we wrote home that talked about some of the things we did. Plus, Tracy did, not always, but Tracy did keep journals on several trips. So, and then there were things, they were very memorable trips. There were things that just were very clear, solid memories. So with all of that, the snapshots, the letters, the journals that were there, that it was, I felt like that was all valid and that I could use it. And I had a lot more material than I even could use.
Wow. Well, I can tell you it was very impressive. Again, I was completely embarrassed for myself that I could never capture the memories like you did. Now, over time, how many times have you visited France? I have to tell you that in the audience here today, there are a lot of Francophiles, and many of us have, in fact, visited France quite a lot. I think that you probably have most of us beat. How many times have you visited France over the years? If you had to put some statistics to it.
Well, I think a good 20 times for sure. And several of those times were for, after Tracy's death, I went and spent 4 or 5 months in Paris at a time, which we hadn't been able to do. But so I've spent a lot of time in France, and I've gone there in preference to going somewhere else, and I think we'll continue to do that. Each time I go, I feel. Each time I go, I remember. Yes, this I like this. I remember now. I like this. This is why I'm here. And then there's something. Then there are new things that I find. So the combination of finding new things and then being revisiting pleasant places is that's a powerful combination for me.
Oh, that's great. So I think we kind of guessed the other day that if you added up all the time that you've spent in France, that it would be in years.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you did a lot of the time is, and this word kept coming to me and while I was reading the book, and then I saw that you dealt with it, is you are the epitome of a flâneur. And Melissa will put for those in the audience that don't know what a flâneur is, it's a delightful word, and this is from an excerpt from our favorite resource, wordreference.com. If you're studying French, this is your go-to tool online. So if you had to guess how many hours you have flânered in Paris, what would you guess?
Oh boy, I don't know, but a lot, because often I would leave my place where I was, and I would be gone for 5 or 6 hours on just walking across Paris, walking wherever, you know, if my whim was to turn left, I turned left. I didn't have any, special plan or goal usually. In fact, that's what flaneuring, if that's a verb, is wandering without a goal. If your goal is to, go buy the latest issue of a magazine, you're not flaneuring because you have a goal. If you take off and you don't know where you're going to go or why you might want to go there, now you're on to something. Now you're doing it. So
no, you're exactly right. And then you also, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. I was the writers. Baudelaire wrote a lot about La Flânerie, and also there's a man I hadn't known about, but that I discovered, Leon Paul Fargue, and he was a great flaneur in the 20s and 30s and knew everyone, and he tended to walk at night. So his books and his accounts of Paris are often about walking at night. I walked during the day, so that was a big difference between him and me. But it's not dependent on the time. It's dependent on getting out there and doing it.
One other thing that you did while you were flaneuring that I never was brave enough to do is you would come across tours in progress, and you would simply attach yourself to the tour. So you never got kicked out.
I did that once. I did that once.
Right.
Okay. To get into La Ruche, but there are, in addition to flaneuring, I found in the weekly publication, L'Officiel, which comes out on Wednesdays, they have a section called Conférence, and what they are walking tours. In fact, I found one that I pulled out in my map, and on any given day, there are 20, 25 conferences on a given day, and you go and you meet usually at a metro stop, and each one is you're going to tour the Hidden Marais, for instance, or you're going to tour Chinatown, and they're in French. They're walking tours, and I took a lot of those, and one or two I didn't like, but on the whole, they were magnificent. And I learned a lot about Paris from people who really knew what they were talking about. And that's again, walking around. That's not the wandering that we're talking about, but it was really valuable and most interesting. And that's one little tip about Paris is if you can speak French, or even enough, you don't have to be completely fluent, those conferences in L'Officiel are really, they cost about 10 euros usually. They're the bargain of, they're a real bargain there in Paris.
Oh, good. And I think later on we might even have a screen snapshot of what you're talking about. Let me move on. That's great. Can you, early on in the book, you explain why Paris, the origins of the city, it's a classical city, and I didn't realize that. And you explained how that's kind of like why it's had the benefit of being quite beautiful from its beginnings. And I know I didn't do a good job of explaining that. Can you share what you meant in that part of the book?
Well, this is just a sort of theory and thought of mine. The Romans obviously were a classical civilization and thought of themselves that way. And they thought that they were descended, whether they really thought this or not, the national myth was that Aeneas had escaped from Troy and then come across the Mediterranean and founded Rome, so that the roots of Rome were in this classical time. The people, so when the Romans came, they conquered a tribe known as the Parisi, and they thought that they were, at least their myth was that they were descended from Paris, the prince, the Trojan prince who had abducted Helen, or maybe she didn't need to be abducted. Anyway, left with Helen for Troy. So they too thought of themselves as inheritors of a classical tradition. So you have both the conquered and the conqueror thinking along these same lines, so that when buildings started being constructed, they were inspired by what they knew of classical architecture and so on. And France continued that way. And I think that's why many of the public buildings in Paris, for example, that were built, whenever they were built, tend to be designed along classical lines. The Assembly Nationale, there's a perfect example.
So that's a great explanation. I know that I'll think of that the next time that I'm in Paris. That really
It might not be true.
Well, no, but it makes sense, because when you're in Paris, you get this sense of that there's this deep underlying fundamental, that the bones of the city are just absolutely gorgeous, and that's a good explanation, as good as an explanation as any. Now, on a more practical and also historical vein as well, you explain in the book why the neighborhoods and the better neighborhoods in Paris are to the west of the city. And Melissa's got a slide. So can you tell us what the theory is on that?
Yeah, that the prevailing wind in Paris is from west to east. So this was more true when people burn coal and wood and so on for heat and for cooking and so on, that smoke then was blown from west to east, and smoke along with all the things with it. It brought ash, dirt, so on, sometimes even unpleasant odors and so on. So you wanted to be at the head of the wind, not on the tail of the wind. So even today, for instance, on the right bank, those tend to be very nice neighborhoods up there, whereas just directly across to the east, they're fine, but they tend to be more, what am I trying to say? More middle class. The neighborhoods are not, they're not drab, but they're not as really spick and span and lovely as the neighborhoods in the West.
So air quality, even back in the industrial age was a very, or especially in the industrial age, was very important. So right. Yeah, I thought that was a fascinating explanation. And of course, we've all seen the beautiful homes in like Neuilly-sur-Seine, and now we know why they're there, why they are there. Mm-hmm. On another practical question, you have stayed over the years in many darling, authentic boutique hotels in Paris. Can you share your top current recommendation and why? And I think that Melissa has a slide of this one.
Yeah, the one I would recommend is Hotel d'Angleterre. It really is a very, very nice hotel. That's the place where Tracy and I stayed during our first stay in Paris. it's expensive. It's gotten more expensive, I think, relative to other hotels lately than it was in the early 1980s when we were there. It's also, there's a lot of history in that hotel, not all of which I remember right now, but I think Hemingway did stay there, and who else is very famous for staying there? I can't remember. Plus, it's on the Rue Jacob, which is a wonderful street filled with specialty stores and so on that are top high-end stores. So it's a lovely neighborhood as well.
Okay, and what part of Paris is that in? I didn't catch that.
It's near Saint-Germain-des-Prés. It's
Oh,
right,
okay, so
yeah.
so it's
right,
left bank. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right.
Okay, great.
Just around the corner from the Dumago.
Okay, and that leads right into our next question. And you know, a lot of us have been to Paris, and we love to sit in cafes and do people watching, and that is an activity that you and Tracy enjoyed a lot. What can you tell us about how attached you were to that activity?
Well, we mentioning Saint-Germain-des-Prés, one of the best nights that we spent was simply sitting in a cafe by the church, and it was summer, and or at least spring, and in those days I don't see it so much anymore, but in those days there were people, entertainer type people, going back and forth on the street, and they would juggle or do whatever. And there was one in particular person, he had a big cardboard bow tie and kind of silly clothes, and he would get right behind somebody and imitate how they were walking. So if they were, he would do it, and so on. And the person was, and then people on this on the tables on the sidewalk would be laughing and so on. And so the person would begin to wonder what's going on and would stop and turn around, and the man could drop the pose in an instant. So they didn't suspect him somehow. And so then the moment they turned around, he was back into character and going on. It was marvelous, but he wasn't the only kind of street performer like that. We loved all that. But and again, I don't know, maybe I just wasn't in the right places, but at the right time. But I didn't see all that much in Paris the last few times I was there. And then just any cafe. I think I talked about the Place Colette, not far from the Louvre. There's such a crossroads of not only Parisians are very interesting to look at themselves, but also you have people from all around the world and who are in Paris for actually the cafes and stuff are kind of out of the picture on the lower right. And it's just it's a living, not museum, it's just a living spectacle that if you have a taste for it, it's always changing and always interesting and so on. And it's really, I think it's one of the great pleasures of Paris is that, there are two balancing pleasures. One is walking without a goal and seeing what you find, and you find amazing things when you do that. The other is sitting without a goal and seeing what comes by. And that, well, there you
is
go.
the essence of the people watching. I'll just mention Simon Cooper, a journalist with The Guardian, the other day in one of his articles. He described Paris as a stage set, and that all the people are kind of like actors on the stage, and that everyone is expected to dress and act somewhat appropriately. And that kind of resonated with me when I was reading your things about the people watching, because it is like watching people on a stage.
Right, and not only that, Tracy and I felt like she bought a coat and I bought a hat, and we talked about those as our disguises. I mean, we thought of ourselves to some degree as different people when we were in Paris, or that we were, that we were somehow imposters there in front of all these people in my hat and in her coat. That wasn't really me. And that adds to it as well, because you feel everybody else may be doing the same thing. They're there too.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think that a lot of us, when we pack to go to Paris, we think about how we need to dress the part. Or how we're going to dress a little bit differently. I mean, I know most women, they're probably like me. I always throw some scarves into my bag when I'm going to Paris that I don't wear when I'm in the United States, because it's almost expected. So next we want to get to, we have two different sets of them, but we have, Melissa's pulled together some pictures of your favorite places. And once again, I am very embarrassed to say that out of all the places that you recommend as the top places to visit in Paris, I have visited almost none of these. So Melissa, why don't you start to take us through these, and Greg can tell us about them. This first one, I think, is Rue Monsieur Le Prince.
Oh, Monsieur Le Prince, yeah. That's just a great street that goes from Boulevard Saint-Michel to Odeon. And along the way, who knows what you're going to find. They're just wonderful. Polidor, the great longtime restaurant, is there on Rue Monsieur Le Prince. And there are intriguing stores of various kinds. And it's surprising to me. No matter how many times I walk down it, I always found something new that had escaped my notice before. So, and it's not very long. But it's just really rich and filled. And anyway, it's one of my favorite streets.
Well, great. That's something for our next trips, then definitely. The Place Colette, we already talked a little bit about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then our next one is Saint-Eustache.
Yeah, I love that church. It's near Les Halles, in fact, just right next door, and it's got the biggest organ in France, so it's said, and they have I'm not Catholic myself, but the service at Saint-Eustache I really do like, and it has very interesting art in the chapels around the sanctuary, and it's not absolutely contemporary anymore, but it's modern. People, Keith Haring, for instance, and people like that are there in the chapels around the sanctuary. So it has this interesting combination of modern things and then the traditional stained glass and paintings and so on that have been there since the church began. Molière was married there, and Louis XIV was baptized there. So there's a lot of history, and right around the corner, and it's in that wonderful neighborhood. So anyway, it's on the right bank, but I really like Saint-Eustache.
Oh, great. And I noticed some people are taking notes. Those of you in the audience today, we'd be happy to send you a PDF of the presentation so that you don't have to take notes, okay? And plus the recording will be online. I mean, take notes if you like to, but you can get all this information from us. And then our next one, Melissa, is Saint-Germain-des-Prés. Yes.
Right. Yes. That's a smaller church, much smaller church than Saint-Eustache. And the congregation, at least the times that I've been there, tends to be young families, for instance, and so on. And it has a much more intimate feel because it is smaller. But I think if not the oldest church in Paris, it's one of the oldest churches in Paris. So it has a wonderful combination of, you feel like you're in history, but it's you're in intimate contact with it. And it's right across the street from the Domingo. So it's fun for a lot of reasons.
Oh, great. And then the next one is La Rue Mouffetard. And I think some people in our audiences have probably visited it, but we wanted to make sure to mention it because it's one of your favorite places.
Yeah, it begins on the north of the Place de la Contrescarpe and ends Place Menard, I think it's called. And it's an ancient Parisian street that it's very narrow and kind of creaky. You can see some, if you don't see them in this photograph, but on the top levels, sometimes there are signs from cafes, for instance, that haven't been there for centuries, but there is the sign still there on the side of the wall. Lots of you see a lot of students there. Good restaurants, good stores of all kinds, and it's narrow. You really feel in certain places, and you can see the street is cobblestones. If you get in just the right corner or look down just the street at just the right angle, you can actually go back in time. There won't be things that will jar that image. Here there are a lot of there's a pretty well-known youth hostel on that street too. So you get a lot of hip young kids and real old buildings and so on. So there we go. Yeah, there's the Place de la Contrescarpe. Yeah. This right, you can hardly see it, but right on the right here, no, wait a minute. No, I don't think so. I was going to say Hemingway's, the apartment Hemingway lived in is just off the Place de la Contrescarpe. And in fact, he begins A Movable Feast with a description of the Place de la Contrescarpe, which in those days was now it's, we couldn't afford to live there probably, but then it was very rustic and a working class area. So anyway, you can see Hemingway's apartment. Yeah.
Well, I was super pleased to find the Place de la Contrescarpe in your book, because I told you, Greg, that's where, when I lived briefly in Paris, that's where I lived. And to me, it was the square where we played flipper, which is pinball, in the cafes there. I don't know if the pinball machines are still there. I'll have to check it out the next time I go. But I was delighted to see that in the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now this next question is maybe a teeny bit tricky, but I thought it was a great statement that you made in the book. But I'd really like to understand a little bit better, why you made it. At one point, you said Paris wasn't hostile to you, but didn't care if you were there.
But yeah, Paris. I've always kind of thought that Paris doesn't care whether you're there or not. And so, but it's not hostile. It's not bothered that you're there. It's fine that you're there. But Paris is what it is. And Paris feels, this is, personifying the city, but to me, as an entity, Paris simply is, and doesn't need me, doesn't need however many other visitors. They're perfectly fine with it. Didn't miss me while I was gone, and doesn't care whether I'm there or not. And if I'm there and I'm having a good time, that's fine. That's fine. It's and also it makes it incumbent on you to appreciate it. It's not, Paris is not an overly friendly dog wagging its tail and licking your hand. it's much more serene, and it's not demanding, but it's up to you to get from Paris what it can offer. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
No, I think that's a description, an explanation that will resonate, I think, with our visitors that have been to Paris. Now we're going to leave Paris just for a moment and talk about some of your other travels in France. You have visited other parts of France, and we have a couple of slides of some of your favorites here. I understand the Camargue and the Loire Valley are particularly good if you're on the horseback. Melissa, can you show? I can see where the Loire Valley is, but where's Camargue on this map? Okay, so there's the Loire. Okay, I didn't realize the Camargue was that far south. Great.
And then, it's on the Mediterranean.
Oh, right, yeah. And then the Dordogne aussi is one of your is one of your favorite places. And Melissa, go ahead and move to the next. Yeah.
Okay, there's the Camargue, and that's the typical Camargue. All the horses are white, and all the cattle are black, and that's the Mediterranean Sea right there, the shore, and it's very level. It's in fact a cowboy. It's a cattle culture. They have, and they raise beef, and they're not cowboys in the American sense, but they're doing what cowboys do. And it's wonderful for horses because the beach is very flat, and it's soft on their hooves, which they love. And I think the fastest I've ever ridden on a horse was across a beach in La Camargue.
Let's show our next picture, Melissa. Yeah, and then we want to get your input on and then you also enjoy the Loire. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's also flat, so that's great for riding horses. And then you have the chateau there that you can go from one to the other. Yeah.
And then I think Melissa has also the Dordogne, and so you did some of your. So any of you in the audience that are horse people, there's quite a few sections of the book that are dedicated to Greg's participation, sometimes successful and sometimes with accidents, on stag hunts and just randonnée à cheval. Yeah, and then another thing that I wanted to share with the audience, if you would, is that you and Tracy are big collectors of Santons. Can you show us? I mean, I hate to even ask you how many you've had over the years. It's probably
the Santons now live with one of our daughters, but Tracy loved these small figures. Here's one. This is a woman. She's selling sticks, I guess, for kindling. And then here is the town dunce with his dunce cap on. And then
maybe not politically correct today, but
well, I'll explain what they are in just one second. Here is, and this one is my favorite. This is a man. He has a tambourine and a trained bear. So he's one of the kind of street performers that I was talking about that you used to see more in Paris. What these are, in Provence, there's a tradition of having living creches and so on during Christmas time. But during the revolution, that was suppressed. And so in the villages there, they started making these little Santons, they're called, which in the local dialect means little saint. And they based them on people types. There's a baker, there's a now I can't, different types of there's a shepherd, there's a dog, of people that they knew around them in the provincial villages at the time. And these were arranged as if they were a creche at Christmas time, but they got under the law because they weren't religious figures. They were contemporary people. And so as a form, though, they've continued and if anything, gotten more, expanded more. And throughout Provence, you can buy them, but also there are places in Paris where you can buy them. And there are collectors. And in the book, there's a kind, I don't want to go, but there's a kind of dramatic moment when the Santons make an unexpected appearance.
Okay. Well, I haven't started collecting the Santons, but I think I'm inspired to. We're going to switch gears here just a little bit and switch to language. So remind me, have you taken classes at the Alliance Française?
I have. I have taken classes at the Alliance Française here in Austin, but also in Paris on the
Boulevard Raspail.
Boulevard Raspail. And they were both very good. I really enjoyed the Parisian Alliance. My only comment there is the classes are too big, but that's almost inevitable. There's almost no way around it. A very international student body, and it was really, really something I enjoyed and was valuable to me. The people that I met at the Parisian Alliance in the school there, again, from all over the world, and I made good friends doing that.
And then you also took classes at the Sorbonne. Melissa, I think we have a picture of that one because it's a special part of the Sorbonne, if I understood correctly, that caters specifically to foreign students. I didn't realize until we talked about.
Yeah, that's not it.
That's not it.
That's not where we went. The school, that part of the Sorbonne is on the Boulevard Raspail.
Okay.
Not too far from the Alliance. It's just south of Boulevard Montparnasse, and it's a whole 7 or 8 stories, and it's a whole building, and it's a big deal.
Okay, all right. Well, a good recommendation for where to learn French on the Boulevard Raspail at the Alliance Française, and then also at this outlet of the Sorbonne. I think we'll move now down to just a couple of questions, one of which has come in from the audience. Can you tell us about your favorite 3 authors in French?
Balzac.
Or at least the one, okay.
Yeah, Balzac, Baudelaire, Maupassant. They're all, 19th century. I haven't read as much contemporary French literature as I wish that I had, but I find those 3 writers in particular, I find very, very satisfying and fun, and I keep going back to them because I know it's going to be a fulfilling reading experience to spend time with them.
Well, good. Thank you. And thanks to the person in the audience that asked that question. Melissa, I want to skip to slide 25, and then we'll backtrack to the final set of tips on where to visit in Paris. I learned a new word in your book. It's called racolage. And so here's our word reference for those of you that don't know it. It's the French word for soliciting for purposes of prostitution. So I didn't. And in your book, you mentioned that there are rules of racolage. You want to tell us just a little bit about that?
Well, so I'm told. It's against the law for a man or a woman or I should do it the other way, for a woman or a man to solicit. But this law is maybe honored in certain parts of Paris. The law is honored in the breach more than in the observance.
Yeah, well, a new word for all of us then, right? you'll pick up some vocabulary and those cultural tips. And then, do you still use your Guide Michelin Plan de Paris?
It's funny. Yes, I do. This is it. It's out of date now. For instance, well, you can't see, but that's the metro map. And there are metro lines that have been initiated since this book was printed. So the metro map isn't accurate anymore. But on the whole, the streets are, and the map of the streets, so you can look up and find. And I find it fits into my pocket very well. They haven't made it for years, this map, but I really like it. To me, it was by far the best handy Paris map. Now, these days, I found that if you're lost, the best thing to do is to ask someone under 20, because what they do is whip out their phone and go on the map thing of the phone. Oh, oui, monsieur, da, 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 da. Because they all have phones. That's what they all do. And it's the surefire, you're sure to get accurate, up-to-date information if you ask someone under 20.
That's a great tip. Hey, I think what we'll do is we have just enough time maybe to look pretty quickly through 5 of your other tips for what to see in Paris. And again, these are ones that many in our audience may not know about. The first one I think is Les Arènes de Lutèce. And that's just, I lived in Paris. I didn't know about this. So
yeah, it's a Roman Colosseum, and it's so fun because you can see. Look, there's the modern building in the background that you can see, and it's so peaceful. It's just off the Rue Monge, and if you go in the evening, it's really nice. There are plenty of places around to get a sandwich or a bottle of wine or whatever your heart desires, and just sit there and usually sit there and enjoy what you have. And usually there are groups of kids playing soccer and groups of maybe elderly gentlemen playing boules, and there's this whole relaxed, enjoying the end of the day feeling. Yeah. And you're in something that's, well, I don't know how old it is, but maybe 2,000 years, that's old.
Wow. Well, yes, it's probably one of the oldest parts of Paris. And then, hey, Melissa, show us Parc Monceau and Parc Monceau. I mean, that is just gorgeous, right?
Yeah, Parc Monceau. Yeah, that's one of the, that's a beautiful, beautiful park. And this is a good example of it because, see, you have this classical row of classical columns and so on. And it's just there. It's not, it's as if it were a ruin. And there's a tiny Egyptian pyramid. It's just there, and so it has this whimsical aspect to it, as well as you can see, it's very lush. There's pond, they're big. It's really, really, really a pretty park.
Oh, good. And then we don't have a picture, I don't think, of the Parc Monceau, but that's another one of your recommendations.
Right, because as you can see, it's in the far south of Paris. There's the 14th arrondissement right there. So you're south of Montparnasse. It also is very calm and lovely with some rolling hills and a big pond and so on. And there are not many people there. So because it's, on the periphery rather than in the center. And I always found that it was a little bit of a walk. I lived for a while. It was about a 20-minute walk for me. But it was worth it. I was always glad I'd made the walk when I got there.
Yeah, because you were staying not too far from Montparnasse, if I remember correctly. Okay.
Right.
And then the cimetière Montparnasse.
Yeah. Now the thing I like, it's in the center of Montparnasse, and yet it's tranquil. So there's all the, all the stuff going on around, and you go in there and it's tranquil. And I found it very peaceful, and there are other people, just simply walking and thinking and so on. It's a good place for that. Plus, Baudelaire is buried there. Serge Gainsborough is buried there. Sartre and de Beauvoir are buried there. And then there are a number of other well-known people. So you can, sometimes I would look for a tomb or two, but often I just would wander around. I think it's so central and yet so peaceful. That's what I liked about it.
And then if I'm not mistaken, that's bordered by the Rue Daguerre, Rue Daguerre.
Rue Daguerre is, right there. That's which is an excellent street of bakeries and grocery stores and fish stores and candy stores and so on. It's just, that's when I lived in that area. That's where I bought my food, on the Rue Daguerre, always. Yeah.
I can't wait to add it to my list of what to see. And then we also have our final tip here is the Rue Soufflot around the Panthéon.
Yeah. Okay. In other words, from this view, you're standing on the Rue Soufflot, and it goes on down to Boulevard Saint-Michel. But to the south is a warren of little streets, and the Sorbonne is just, 5 minutes from here. So they're filled with little publishers, with little bookstores, with art movie theaters, all these things that are part of the Sorbonne world, so to speak. And they're so narrow and so small and so short. You constantly are kind of going around a corner, and you go around a corner and, oh, I didn't know that was there. It's really, I really like the area. And then there are a lot of cafes and students and laughter. It's fun.
Well, thank you for sharing all those great tips. And actually, we have in the chat a few people sharing some tips as well. So that's great for everyone. Melissa, do you have a couple questions from the chat? I think we have just enough time to hit one or two of those.
Yeah, we do have a couple. Rose wanted to know about the title of the book.
Okay, I have a very close friend, Stephen Harrigan, who's an author. In fact, that's him right there. And I was talking about, I'm thinking, talking to him about, I'm thinking about a book about Paris, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, and he said, Paris without her. And that just, I knew immediately that was the title. And when I had getting the title right at that moment, it really helped me organize the book and think about the book. Getting the title ahead and then working on the book was really important to me. So Steve was in many other ways as well, was he a great help. But right in that, he was a really great help.
And then Maria has asked, given that it certainly was an emotional ordeal for you, why did you decide to write the book? And Jane would like to know, were there any places that you wanted to avoid on your trips going back to Paris?
That's interesting. No, there weren't any places that I wanted to avoid. In fact, it was pleasant. It brought back memories that were pleasant. And so in a way, almost the opposite. I was pulled back to places that we had been together. And why did I write the book? I felt that I wanted to do it. There's no other, it was it was that simple. I thought these are things that happened to me and to her and were important, and I wanted to record them.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Greg. As the French would say, on est admirablement dans les temps. We're just about out of time. And I'd like, if possible, if Melissa would take us all off of mute so that we could show some applause or thank Greg for his time. That's the way we usually wrap these up. Okay. Okay, merci. Thank you very much.
Merci,
Merci, Greg.
Merci beaucoup. Merci mille fois. C'est
This was a-
formidable.
Yeah,
C'est vraiment, vraiment très
Go, Greg.
formidable.
Delight, Meg, an absolute delight.
Merci.
Oui,
Okay, thanks
C'est
everybody.
merveilleux.
Greg, you're the man.
Au revoir.
Au revoir. Merci, merci.
Merci bien. À la prochaine.